Last night, my friend Miss Duncan the Tall told me that my favorite author, Sir Brandon Sanderson, released a draft version of the Stormlight Archive Book 5 Prologue, and it was awesome. So let's break it down today, and let's also go back to weekly cosmere videos. Just a heads up, this video will have a major spoiler from Mistborn. The prologue to every Stormlight book takes place during the same scene, the night of Gavilar's death. Each prologue is told from a different character's perspective. The Way of King's prologue was Szeth, Sun Villano, Truthless of Shinovar. In this prologue, we got the fight between Szeth and Gavilar. The Words of Radiance prologue was Jasnah Kholin. Liz told Jasnah that she had sold Szeth to the slaver market a few weeks prior since Szeth was storming creepy. The Oathbringer prologue was Eshonai. Gavilar gave Eshonai a sphere of voidlight and told her that he was going to bring back the Parshendi's gods. This terrified Eshonai, so she told her leaders and they sent out Szeth to kill Gavilar. The Rhythm of War prologue was Navani. Navani had a chat with Gavilar, and he was very condescending and disrespectful to her. This new prologue for Book 5 is Gavilar. I have broken it down into 13 sections, starting with the Stormfather. The chapter began with Gavilar and the Stormfather in a vision of Aharietiam, which was the name given to the last desolation since they had thought that it was a glorious victory. In truth, 9 of the heralds abandoned their honor blades and the Oath Pact. During this vision, Gavilar grabbed 2 blades. First, he grabbed Jezrien's blade. Lo and behold, Szeth used Jezrien's honor blade to fight Gavilar later in this chapter. The second honor blade that Gavilar grabbed was that of the herald named Chanaranash. Other than an abbreviated version of her name being used twice as a swear and a temple of her name being mentioned once, this is the first time that Chanaranash' name has appeared in the text. Later in the chapter, a herald dies. So the fact that her name was mentioned for the first time in this chapter suggests that she may have been the herald that died. It's also worth noting that the Stormfather told Gavilar that Chanaranash had fiery red hair. Keep that on your radar because we will get back to this at the end. Gavilar disrespectfully tossed Jezrien's honor blade to the stone, and this annoyed the Stormfather as well as many readers. We also got a look inside Gavilar's head. Gavilar's goal was to become immortal by becoming a herald. He thought to himself that he sometimes acted fake so that the Stormfather would see him as pious and worthy. He also thought to himself that if the Stormfather knew of Gavilar's plan and of his heart, then the Stormfather would not be working with him. And if all that wasn't bad enough, Gavilar literally lied to the Stormfather, saying that a king's duty is to his people. But in truth, Gavilar's plans were about one person, himself. Therefore, he kept saying the words from the Way of King's book, but none of them were correct. After all, it's about more than just the words. It's about intent. The next section is a chat with Dalinar. Dalinar barged into the room and told Gavilar that he wanted to know what Gavilar's true intentions were with the Parshendi. Dalinar figured that Gavilar had a secret plan to conquer the Parshendi, and Dalinar did not want that since he liked the Parshendi and felt a kinship to them. As a response, Gavilar reminded Dalinar of his wife Evie, and as a reminder, Dalinar had accidentally killed Evie while experiencing the thrill. So that was a low blow, and Gavilar had done it intentionally. Gavilar had reminded Dalinar of his wife in hopes of Dalinar getting drunk to forget about her. What a punk. It's worth noting, however, that Gavilar was scared of his brother Dalinar, and he had a reason to be. After all, in the past, Dalinar had nearly snapped and killed Gavilar during a moment of thrill. When Dalinar left Gavilar, the Stormfather told Gavilar that Dalinar had potential that Gavilar was not seeing. In hindsight, that is very cool because Dalinar eventually bonded the Stormfather. The next person to show up and chat with Gavilar was Thaidakar. As a reminder, Thaidakar was revealed to be the Lord of Scars in Rhythm of War. So, Thaidakar is actually Kelsier. But for the sake of this video, let's refer to him as Thaidakar. Thaidakar was not happy. He said that he had given Gavilar information, and Gavilar was supposed to have delivered Restares to him. But instead of doing so, Gavilar had begun to work with Restares. As a reminder, Restares is actually the herald named Kalak. So Thaidakar was not happy that Gavilar had not honored his side of their agreement. When Thaidakar removed his hood, he was blue. Not like an Amian or a Natan, Thaidakar was glowing blue as if he had been made of a white-blue light. And he was. Thaidakar was not physically there. Since Thaidakar is actually Kelsier, who is on another planet, Kelsier used a Sion to form the shape of his avatar, including the spike in his eye. Very cool. Gavilar asked Thaidakar if he knew the words that Gavilar must speak, but Thaidakar did not. Thaidakar then transformed back into the Seon and told Gavilar one last time to deliver Restares to him, or else. Thaidakar warned Gavilar that he would not like being his enemy. So that was awesome. Kelsier was as confident as ever. After Thaidakar left, Gavilar thought about Navani, and to his credit, he missed the days when they had schemed together and laughed together. But Gavilar believed that the Stormfather had hinted that there was room for just one new herald, and Gavilar wanted to be that herald. He didn't tell Navani about his plans because he didn't know if he could trust her. The next two people to show up were Restares and Nale. Restares is in a group known as the Sons of Honor, and as a reminder, Restares is the man whom Thaidakar is seeking. Gavilar did not respect Restares. In fact, he was thinking about tossing Restares aside and taking control of the Sons of Honor. On the other hand, Gavilar was immediately impressed by Nale. Gavilar told him that the Knights Radiant vanished when the Voidbringers died, so he wanted to bring the Voidbringers back in hopes of bringing back the Radiant powers. And that was sort of true. What Gavilar really wanted was for the Heralds to return so that he could usurp one of their positions. Restares told Gavilar that bringing back the Voidbringers was a bad idea. Gavilar countered by telling Restares that a man named Thaidakar wants him, but Gavilar had protected him so far. Restares told Gavilar that Thaidakar wants secrets such as the location of the unmade named Ba-Adu Mishram. Nale then grabbed Gavilar's shoulder like a vice and asked Gavilar what steps he had already taken. Gavilar showed them Voidlight spheres, and Nale responded that Gavilar was a fool. Restares got excited though, that maybe Gavilar's plan would work. They could bring the Voidbringers back and destroy them. It's also worth noting that when Restares got excited, he referred to Nale as Nale. The Stormfather had told Gavilar that the Heralds had all returned to fight on Damnation, but Gavilar noted that Nale did look like the depictions of the Herald, and he had the same birthmark. So Gavilar began to wonder if they actually were Heralds, especially Nale, and if so, then he felt as if the Stormfather had lied to him. Nale told Gavilar that his plan was far too dangerous, but that he understands that Gavilar is king, and thus Gavilar's will is law in his land. Gavilar responded that that was true. His will was the law. He even said that he himself, Gavilar, was the law. That line was great, because it relates directly to Nale's Order of Knights Radiant, the Skybreakers, the one that Szeth is part of. Gavilar told him that his experiments had worked, that they were able to move Voidlight in Shadesmar between Rosshar and Damnation. As a reminder, Damnation is a location on a nearby planet called Braze. So Gavilar was able to move light between Rosshar and Braze. That excited Restares, since his ultimate goal was to leave Rosshar. But then Navani showed up. Before Restares and Nale left, they told Gavilar that another one of them was there that night, and that they had spotted her handiwork. Restares clarified that he was not referring to another member of the Sons of Honor, but rather another herald. He may have been referring to Shalash, since she was definitely at the feast. Also, he said that he had spotted her handiwork. One thing that Shalash likes to do is to destroy imagery of herself. In Szeth's prologue, he had noticed the statues of the heralds, but one was missing, Shalash's statue. So that may have been who and what Restares was talking about. Shalash was also at the feast, and the handiwork that she did was the removal of her statue. So Restares and Nale left, and Gavilar had a quick chat with Navani. He noticed how beautiful she was, and once again, he thought about telling her his plan, but ultimately, he decided to keep it a secret. And as we know from Navani's prologue, Gavilar was very rude to her during this chat. After Navani left, Gavilar made an appearance at the feast, and then slipped away to be by himself again, where he had another chat with the Stormfather. He asked the Stormfather why Thaidakar would want Ba-Adu Mishram. The Stormfather told Gavilar that Ba-Adu Mishram had risen up in an attempt to replace the gods of the Voidbringers. She gave them forms, voidlight, and abilities so as to fight for themselves. But Ba-Adu Mishram was not strong enough to uphold an entire people, so it all came crashing down when the Radiants trapped Mishram in a gemstone so as to prevent her from destroying all of Rosshar. The side effect of that event created the Parshman. Simple Parshman. The Stormfather told Gavilar that if Gavilar took the position that he was offering him, then he would need someone to fight, to which Gavilar said, "Give it to me, now, I need it." The Stormfather turned his shimmering head in Gavilar's direction, most likely because he did not like Gavilar's tone and his demand. But Gavilar is a big dum-dum, so Gavilar thought that he had almost found the words. Gavilar noticed that the Stormfather seemed increasingly suspicious and thought that he might trap the Stormfather in a gemstone just as Ba-Adu Mishram had been trapped in one. Then, Gavilar asked the Stormfather if he regretted choosing Gavilar, but the Stormfather refused to answer, and then he vanished. Gavilar asked the Stormfather to watch the door and tell him if anyone else came to spy on him, to which the Stormfather responded that he is not Gavilar's errand boy, that they had no bond, and Gavilar was but his tool. The next person to enter the room was Amaram, who was also a member of the Sons of Honor. Amaram entered with 3 men and 2 women. One of the men was one of Amaram's lieutenants, and he assumed that the other 4 would be new recruits for the Sons of Honor. Gavilar told Amaram that his experiment was a success, and Amaram surprised Gavilar when he commented that maybe they would control the Parshendi instead of eliminating them. After his prior meeting with Restares, Gavilar had begun to worry that a schism in the Sons of Honor was coming, and he wanted Amaram to be on his side. Unfortunately, Gavilar's daughter, Yasna, had not shown an interest in marrying Amaram as Gavilar had wanted, and Navani believed that Yasna could do better than Amaram. And she's right. Gavilar could sense that Amaram hungered for the throne, and he thought to himself that he might reward Amaram with the throne since his own son Elhokar did not deserve it. Amaram went back to the others in the room, and Gavilar noticed one of the people standing alone, Taravangian, the king of Kharbranth, a man who was famous for being dumb. Of course, Taravangian is not always dumb. Sometimes he is smart, and this day was one of those days. Gavilar told Taravangian that the desolation was near, the Everstorm, the night of sorrows, and to his surprise, Taravangian didn't think that Gavilar sounded crazy. Taravangian seemed to actually believe him. Taravangian went on to tell Gavilar that his own mother had mentioned the same thing in her dying words, and Gavilar had heard of people's dying words being prophetic, so he dug it. Gavilar then said that the Almighty had told him about the desolation through visions, and for the first time in months, he actually had a sincere feeling of hope that he might be the person to stop what was coming. The Stormfather then notified Gavilar that Eshonai was approaching, and there was something about her. So Gavilar asked the others to leave, and Gavilar had a private chat with Eshonai. We know from Eshonai's prologue that Gavilar gave her a sphere of void light and told her to bring it to the Parshendi leaders known as the 5. Gavilar had thought that his conversation with Eshonai had gone excellently, but that's not what happened, because he didn't actually listen to her. Eshonai's people had abandoned their old gods for a reason, so the idea of bringing back their gods terrified her. She did not want their old gods back. As a result, Eshonai went back to the 5, and they told their new assassin Szeth to kill Gavilar. After Eshonai left, Gavilar had another chat with the Stormfather. Once again, he asked the Stormfather if he regretted choosing Gavilar. The Stormfather said that he regrets the way he treated Gavilar, that he should not have been so accommodating because it made Gavilar lazy. The Stormfather said that Gavilar does not consider with reverence the position which he seeks, and that he feels that Gavilar is not the one he needs. The Stormfather reminded Gavilar that between returns he would be tortured in damnation. That keeps the Voidbringers away until one of the heralds cracks from the torture. The Stormfather wondered why this didn't bother Gavilar. Gavilar told him the truth. He had no plan on staying in damnation. Gavilar's plan was to always give up right away and return to Roshar. He had no plan to stop the war. The Stormfather did not respond, and Gavilar wondered if the Stormfather's posture suggested that he was proud of Gavilar. But once again, this was just Gavilar being a big dum-dum. The Stormfather was not happy with Gavilar, quite the contrary. The Stormfather told Gavilar that he had miscalculated with him. Gavilar freaked out, slamming a cup down on the table, shattering it and yelling, "What are the storming words?" The Stormfather pointed out that it wasn't what he was saying that was wrong, but ... The Stormfather never finished the sentence because of what happened next. A herald died, which we will get to. But real quick, the Stormfather may have been about to tell Gavilar that it's not just about the words, but about intent. And Gavilar's intent was way off. Alright, so the Stormfather never finished that sentence because he suddenly cried out that one of the heralds had died. And that herald may have been Shallan's mother. Shallan has red hair, so did her mother, and so did the herald named Chana-Ranaj. For some time, Stormlight fans have wondered if Shallan's mother was the herald Chana-Ranaj, due to the red hair, and now there is even more ammo for that theory. Gavilar died 6 years prior to Words of Radiance. Shallan's mother also died 6 years prior to Words of Radiance, so Gavilar and Shallan's mother both died the same year. Now, we know that a herald died the same day as Gavilar. So, in theory, the herald that the Stormfather was referring to may have been Shallan's mother. Very cool, but let's continue. When the Stormfather realized that a herald had died, he sort of freaked out and stumbled over his words, saying that he is not ready, the Oath Pact, they mustn't see, they mustn't know, ... The reason why the Stormfather began to ramble may have been because he was scared. He had been working with Gavilar, but he had come to realize that Gavilar was the wrong guy. That is why the Stormfather referred to himself as the biggest fool of them all, the thing that had miscalculated. He told Gavilar that this was a goodbye, for he had seen a glimpse of what was coming, and he would not stop it. Sadeas busted into the room and notified Gavilar of an assassin. Gavilar did not have his armor since one of his men was wearing it elsewhere. Sadeas' men brought him his own armor, and they put it on Gavilar as a trick. Sadeas then put on Gavilar's cloak and was ushered away from Szeth, hiding beneath a hood. As we know from the Szeth prologue, Szeth fought Gavilar and brought him to his knees. Szeth was about to leave the Shardbearer and run after the man whom he thought was the king, but then Szeth realized that the Shardbearer whom he had been fighting was skilled, and it was said that few men could rival Gavilar Kholin's swordsmanship. So Szeth realized that the man who ran away in the king's cloak was just a trick. Therefore, he stayed and fought the Shardbearer, who turned out to be Gavilar. Szeth defeated Gavilar in an awesome fight that ended with that badass balcony scene from The Way of Kings. On the ground, Gavilar assumed that the assassin had been sent by Thaidakar, but once again, Gavilar was wrong. Szeth had been sent to kill him by the Parshendi. Here's how that went down. Gavilar's daughter Yasna had been in contact with an assassin called Lys, because Yasna had been thinking about having Lys kill her brother Elokar's wife. Yasna decided not to do this. Instead, she told Lys to keep an eye on Elokar's wife. During that conversation, Lys told Yasna that her Shin servant had been Stormy Creepy, so she had sold him to a slaver a few weeks prior. Lo and behold, Nale had told Venli about Szeth, Venli told Clade, and Clade purchased Szeth. So, when Eshonai told the ruling council of the Parshendi about Gavilar's plans, they pulled an audible. They dressed Szeth up in white, as is a Parshendi tradition, and sent him off to kill Gavilar. That brings us to the ending. Before Gavilar died, Gavilar worried about his family. He realized that they would need a warrior, but his own son Elokar could not handle what was to come. So he told Szeth to tell his brother that he must find the most important words a man can say. Then he pulled out the sphere with anti-void light and told the Stormfather to take it, saying that they must not get it, without specifying who he meant by they. This was interesting, because Szeth certainly didn't realize that Gavilar had been speaking to the Stormfather. And there's a chance that Gavilar simply misinterpreted Szeth's own glow as the Stormfather being behind Szeth. Regardless, Szeth grabbed the anti-void light sphere, and the Stormfather responded by saying that he would never trust Gavilar's family again, which adds a lot of color to the relationship arc between Dalinar and the Stormfather. Very cool. Gavilar realized that he had failed, that he had brought them all to ruin. He realized with horror that this would be his legacy. And in the end, Gavilar Kholin, heir to the heralds, died as all men ultimately must, alone. But, luckily for him, that was not his legacy. He did not get remembered as the failure that he was. And who does he owe that to? Navani, quote, although a part of her had grown to hate Gavilar, she didn't truly want him dead, did she? No, this was not how it should have ended. And so she felt another emotion, pity. Lying there, blood pooling on the tabletop around him, Gavilar Kholin's corpse seemed the ultimate insult to his grand plans. He thought he was eternal, did he? He thought to reach for some grand vision too important to share with her? Well, the father of storms and the mother of the world ignored the desires of men, no matter how grand. What she didn't feel was grief. His death was meaningful, but it didn't mean anything to her, other than perhaps a way for her children to never have to learn what he'd become. I will be the better person, Gavilar, she thought, closing his eyes. For what you once were, I'll let the world pretend. I'll give you your legacy.